Hi folks, Gavin Wedell from ChangePlan here today. Very excited. We've got Emile Massenat, one of the principals of Awan Associates in Canada, joining us to talk about change and to talk about change platforms. Emile, can we kick off though? How did you get involved in the world of organisational change management?
Well, that's an interesting question, Gavin. I was a project manager by trade years ago when my beard wasn't as white. And I kind of stumbled really into change management when I started doing a lot of work with executive around business transformation. Very quickly, we realized that there was a very technical side to project management and project delivery, but there was also a very people side driven side of the change. And that's the part that interested me the most. And that was the part around adoption, around engagement, around changing the culture of organizations in order to adapt or adopt a specific technology process or so on and so forth. So that's kind of my foray into change management, and I haven't looked back since. I've been doing it now for close to 15 years.
Just at least from a Canadian perspective, do you see a lot of change managers tend to move from project management to change management, just like you did?
Well, I think it's a bit of a mix, quite frankly. I know a lot of OD, organizational development individuals that kind of move into change management, so, and a lot of PMs as well. I would, if I were to think back in my decade or more of experience, I think it's about a 50-50 split in terms of where they come from. OD is a natural fit, right? Because as you're designing your organization, there are a set of behaviors that need to match what you're trying to create in order to get the results that you're looking for, right? So OD is about putting the pieces together, and change management is about building the culture, the behaviors, the environment that you want in order to have that performance. And so the two of them marry very well. Oftentimes, I've noticed that my PMs, my program or project managers, tend to bring a certain set of skill sets that are very helpful and useful, but that are not necessarily translatable to my change management or my change agents. So the two come together very well.
From my perspective, the vast majority, 95% of the work that we change managers tend to do is project based. Does that marry with your experience?
So I think there's a question of maturity of the organization. For organizations that are new to change management, they'll tend to see it more of a, okay, I've got 16 projects that are going on in this fiscal year, so I'll need two FTEs in order to help those initiatives and so on and so forth. But what we're seeing more and more of is for a lot of, at least organization in the public sector, they've crossed the maturity of understanding that change management is only good for projects. And now they're looking at it from a scalability standpoint in terms of the organization. Organizations need to be leaner, they need to be more adaptive, and that's a change in themselves. So we're seeing a bit of both. And in Canada, we do a bit of both. So we do both the tactical project on the grounds change management and a lot more strategic change management support for those strategic initiatives.
I'm wondering if you could share a little bit around the particular industries or sectors that seem to be more receptive to the work that we as change managers do, and those that seem perhaps a little bit less mature or less down that path.
Well, think about it. Think about it in terms of the types of organization, right? So, private sector organizations tend to have to adapt very, very quickly, or they die. So, the degree of motivation and incentive for them to move quickly is very high and very fast. So, if you take a look at the banking industry, for example, in Canada, we only have five major banks, but I mean they're competing against each other. It's a market share dominance all the time, and they have to move fairly quickly. So, these organizations make a lot of investments around change management, business transformation support, and they tend to move very quickly. Then you've got crown corporations. So crown corporations are still federally funded, but they tend to behave a bit more like private sector organizations. And those organizations are again very low risk tolerance because they're federally funded. They don't want to be in the news, but there's definitely openness to change, to using different tools in order to remain relevant and provide value for the taxpayer dollars. And then the third tier would be your pure public sector organization, fully taxpayer funded, very big, highly unionized, very low risk tolerance, but things tend to take a bit more time to move in those particular kind of organizations. So all of these three categories of organizations all face the same type of pressures, but with different types of impacts. For the private sector organization, they go out of business if they can't change and adapt very quickly. For crown corporations, they might disappoint their stakeholders, either public industry or the federal government. And then for the federal government, they don't want to be in the news, so the risk tolerance is also lower there. They all deal with change in different ways, but with constant themes in terms of how do we support people to move their behaviors to what they're doing today to what they need to be doing tomorrow. All of these organizations tend to you look at policies, technologies, and procedures in order to generate change. But that in itself is not enough. You need people to adopt or to engage with you and to feel that they're part of this transformation and the change. And so the lower your risk to tolerance, if you will, the more effort is required in order to get the ball moving.
We were talking just off camera a little bit around making the case for change, and I was just thinking as you were speaking around the different motivations that one might be able to pull upon when you're making the case. So in the commercial sector, obviously competitive pressure. Crown corporations, it's more reputational concerns, and then public sector, perhaps political concerns as well. Does that influence your work when you're assisting with the case for change?
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. There are, in the public sector, particularly, there are always budget constraints, and oftentimes, unfortunately, the value of certain programs are not always well thought through. In Canada, we had a large payroll implementation a few years ago that made the news, unfortunately. One of the challenges with that particular initiative was that the change management considerations weren't really taken, or people expected change management to happen on its own. If you're not intentional about doing change management in order to support your people in a transition, it tends not to happen. It's not because people have ill intent. It's just because people are busy. If they do it off the side of their desk, well, the quality is not always there, and so on and so forth. So it's always a bit more difficult in some instances within the public sector to advocate for the need for intentional change management design and change management thinking, change management leadership. From that perspective, but I can say that in the past, in the past 5 to 10 years, I've seen a lot of focus around making sure that we employees, particularly, and leaders are well supported through business transformation, which has a high impact and a positive impact on change management.
Before we actually even met, I understand you were on a mission to find a digital platform to support change. Can you tell us a little bit about what drew you to actually even looking for a digital platform in the first place?
Sure. So, being an ex-PM, program management, project management is something that I'm super comfortable with. And there are a series of tools, let it be Microsoft-based or not, that are available in order to help manage your milestones. But in all of my change work, in all of the various clients that I've worked for and worked with, everybody's using something different, and it's mostly Excel-based Word documents, workflows in MS Teams, and so on and so forth. So it's a very manual process in supporting individuals and teams through business transformation. The other big gap that I saw in the market, and my team and I saw in the market, is that decision makers need to have a lens of what's happening in the change landscape in order to make smart decisions. And so when a VP is looking at a 3-year horizon, a $20 million capital investment, and she wants to know, for example, what areas of her business have the highest impact of transformation in the next 3 years, there's no quick or easy way for her to actually see that. And so she would knock on my door and say, hey, Mr. Change Management Expert, can you take a look at my pipeline for the next 3 years and tell me which of my facilities located across the Canada has the highest impact, to make sure that we don't, submerge them with new change. And getting that information is extremely difficult and manual. At least it was until I met you and I met the application. So a few years ago, my business partner and I, Miriam, thought, hey, let's get together and see if we can either find something off the shelf that can do this work for us, or we build it ourselves. And it's through that conversation and through that study that we stumble upon your team and your and the software that you the tool, I should say, that you offer. And in it, we found a lot of things that are supportive of the work that we're trying to do as business transformation experts.
You can tell us a little bit about the kinds of requirements that you had in terms of functionalities and features.
Sure. We work in the Canadian market. In Canada, we have two official languages, French and English. This is our typically, even though our business language is primarily English, it's a requirement for most of our organizations to be able to work in French as well. And so the bilingualism piece was extremely important for us. The second thing is the data residency considerations. And so we needed to have a piece of software, or a tool, I should say, that was where the data was housed here in Canada, not in the UK, specifically not in the US, but local data residency requirements were extremely important. The third thing that was really important for us as well is to have a tool that is a methodology agnostic. So we tend to be ProSci certified, but a number of our clients use McKinsey 7, the PwC Transform, Cotter's change methodology as well. So we didn't want something that was married to a methodology, but still had enough foundational structure around change management in order to be able to adapt to the environment of the client, and more importantly, to meet the client where they are from a maturity standpoint. Right? Some clients have 15 change practitioners that are all gung-ho deployed through the organization. Other clients have a team of two, and they're expected to manage 100 initiatives or 50 initiatives within the year. So we wanted a tool that was scalable without being overbearing for people that are novice or that are not really deep in change management. And so these are some of the requirements that we had that we feel were met with the tool itself.
We've been talking a lot about AI, about some of the trends that we're seeing out there. In your view, where are we heading in the next 5 years as a discipline?
Well, think about it this way. There's a lot said about, is AI going to replace change managers? And I don't think it's going to replace change management. I think it's going to change the way we work. As a whole. The same way today, when you go into your Instagram, rather than just typing a search button, you actually have an AI bar that's giving you suggestions of what you ought to be looking for. I think AI is going to and robotics as a whole, and artificial intelligence is going to enhance the practitioner's toolbox and the way we deliver change management as a whole. If anything, I think it's going to accelerate it in a very positive way. But that in itself is a change. So the introduction of artificial learning, of AI, is a change for organizations. And that means that the way people work is also going to evolve, which means what? Well, they need more change management support and business transformation support. And so I think that when I look at the playing field for practitioners in the next 5 to 10 years, embrace change. Like, there's going to be more of it. There's going to be more of a requirement for us to be smarter, leaner, and this is where the tool like the ChangePlan tool come into consideration, because we'll have to be very smart with the dollars that we use. We're still in a very inflationary context where every dollar counts, and so as practitioners, we're constantly asked to do more with less. And that means leveraging AI. It means leveraging smart tools that can help us do more work more intelligently and support future business transformation.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir here. I completely agree with you. I think the amount of change that's coming is a tremendous opportunity, in addition to being a challenge to step up. So I think we're completely aligned on that. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to many years more partnering with you guys at Awan Associates. And as you mentioned, we do have French language support within our natively and a Canadian server, all spooled up within Change. So we're excited to be able to serve the Canadian market. And thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Gavin.